welcome to episode 10, little anniversary, episode 10 of Black, Brown, Yellow, White. Today it is my privilege to interview Merlyna Lim, Professor Lim. She is a Canada Research Chair in Digital Media and Global Network Society at Carleton University in Ottawa. She specializes in the relationship between technology, society, and political culture. Her work focuses on digital media's role in justice, democracy, and civic engagement. With numerous interdisciplinary publications and global recognition for her scholarship. Among her notable publications are Social Media and Politics in Southeast Asia, as well as Roots, Routes, Routers, Communication and Media of Contemporary Social Movements. In 2016, Professor Merlyna Lim was inducted into the Royal Society of Canada's new College of Scholars, Artists and Scientists, a recognition of her significant and multidisciplinary research contributions. She has appeared in more than 100 media coverages, including The Guardian, Al Jazeera, and CBC News. So thank you very much, Professor Lim, for having you here today in this interview. And the first question is a super difficult one, but do you think it would be possible, because we would like to know the main protagonist, you to give us a very condensed biography, Merlyna Lim, in 2 minutes?
Thank you, Tamba. It's a great pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me. It's a privilege, right, for me to be here. How should I tell about myself? I think I'm just like, uh, so I was born and raised in the place called Dayuh Kolot, which is a industrial slum in Indonesia. Literally, if you Google it up, there is nothing good coming out of that place. It's flooding, it's pollution, textile factory. So I came from there, and I think I actually what I am now. I never dream about it. I mean, Canada is a chair in Canada. I live in many places on earth, and I think I'm doing something that I'm passionate about, which is through looking at digital media and society and trying to unravel the processes that matters to our humanity, right? My research is based in the global south, deal with real world problem. And I think I would be just fine if I keep continuing doing this thing until I die. So that's what my life in 2 minutes.
Thank you very much. And
So I did all my primary education in Indonesia, and actually working at a company corporation for short while, where I felt there was a gap between my work life, like professionally. It was like I was exposed to corruption and all that was so linked with development, right? Like like as a young female, you could imagine, like I was like young female Indonesian. It was very difficult anyway. Regardless how your brain works, it was like your position almost like an accessories, right? And and my family, my parents are not educated, so it's not like they would understand what I wanted to do. Basically, just get married, have kids, right? That was everything. So I thought like there was something else, and life got my chance to do graduate degrees, get scholarship to the Netherlands, get PhD. Right away, got a job in the US. I was surprised. But I was actually, very hard to get jobs, right? And I got jobs in the US and the University of Southern California as a postdoc right away before I graduated. And it was an Annenberg Center for Communication. So I already moved on my PhD in science and technology studies, allow me to combine technical aspect and social aspect. So
Yeah.
it was like a middle ground, kind of like where I felt I belong. My technical engineering abilities,
Mhm.
scientific ability, right, helps actually to better grasp technological problem, right? Technological and societal problems in combination. So make me like, and then I got a job as a tenure track assistant professor at Arizona State in the
Mhm.
U.S. So it was like so smooth that I uh, so smooth in terms of trajectory, though a lot of struggle that
Yeah.
life story, right?
Yeah.
Like I was nomad, for example, for a year and a half. But I just it was driven by, I think my escape was driven by uh I just didn't want to be someone I didn't like. I
Yeah.
wanted to do something meaningful. And then yeah, US and then here. So I've been living in many places in the world, in Europe, obviously, some places in Asia when I was nomad and didn't want to go home.
Yeah.
And then 20 years later, I'm here in Canada, and I've been in Ottawa for 10 years now. I moved from my last place in the US was Princeton,
Yeah.
uh, New Jersey, and I think, yeah, it's not. I rarely think about this,
Yeah.
but now that you ask me, it's a long journey, and
It
it's
is.
great that it's great that I always say, like I think life always gets better for me,
Yeah.
regardless what happened. I just feel something I look forward to tomorrow. There
Yeah.
is more things I need to do, and it's been great so far.
Um, along the lines of just a bit more on your background, I was thinking what have been maybe some of the sources of inspiration? It could be from art people in your life. What have there been some certain sources that inspired you?
Yeah, I think I was a pretty bookworm as a child, so I was number 5 out of 7,
Yeah.
uh, and it means that you didn't get much attention. No
Yeah.
books at My parents were very religiously conservative. We shouldn't read secular books, just like it's very limited. We were not. I think going to cinema was a sin,
Mhm.
those things. And on the top of that, we were born. I was born as minority.
Yeah.
I'm actually never not my minority in my life. I'm always minority everywhere since I was born. So that's kind of like put me on the sort of like questioning mode all the time, right? Even
Mhm.
as a child. And I wanted to know something bigger than this, something bigger than this. And books allow me to do that. I remember that my first hero was basically, of course, Marie Curie, right? I was
Yeah.
thinking, this is it, right? Like a
Yeah.
female. Oh my God, this must be so difficult back then. And my life is not as difficult, right? Because,
Yeah.
okay, like, I always imagine myself. At the same time, I wanted to travel the world. I always wanted to travel the world. So, and I think between fiction, like reading fiction, but I love biography of scientists. I
Yeah.
think I had never met anybody have PhD in my neighborhood, but it was almost no role model in growing up because I think at that moment for female, you
Yeah.
just have to graduate from high school and probably working at a factory. That was
Yeah.
like textile factory, so I live in the sort of industrial zone.
Mhm.
Uh, that's the best thing.
Yeah.
If you become staff, not labor, not doing the not blue collar. So if you go working at a factory as a secretary or something, right? Accounting
Yeah.
or something, that would be the highest achievement.
Yeah.
But I knew, I mean, it's like I was like 5 years old.
Mhm.
I thought of escaping. I, I packed
Wow.
my, I packed my bag. I think this is not.
It must have
I was
looked
just
like,
thinking like I think I was born in the wrong place.
yeah.
That's what I thought. But I didn't know. For me, it was more like rather than inspiring to be something, I
Hmm.
think I was inspired to find out what I should become. And I didn't know, right? 5 years old, I didn't know, and then eventually had to go back home because I couldn't even cross the road. And then teenagers like
Yeah.
uh, started reading forbidden books and those things. Music, I think, allowed me to. I was so into music, allowed me to see. Uh, I was like, when I saw music, oh, probably this is it. This is probably for me that I would be meaningful. But then apparently that's not that. So I kept searching what I was, and even
Yeah.
when I got PhD, I still didn't know what I wasn't confident, and I'm still
Hmm.
not confident. I mean, I don't care anymore about that, right? I think I
Yeah.
just try to do my best, and that's it. Now I don't care about confident, not confidence. But when
Mm.
I was young, mostly I didn't know that I could. You know,
Yeah.
the feeling that the society think that you are not enough kind of thing, right? I mean, being
Yeah.
brown and being female,
Yeah.
being from developing countries, is like there is sort of like there is a presumed incompetent. That's the society. Sometimes, right, even right now, and I'm old and much older, and still like I go to some places, they will not think that I'm a professor, and I'm not just professor, right? I'm like Canada
Yeah.
researcher, and not only that, I'm actually a Royal Society member, for example.
Yeah.
But nobody presumed that about me.
Yeah.
But now, unlike when I was young, I just don't care, right? I said it's actually
Yeah.
kind of like laughable. It's kind of funny right now, you know,
Yeah.
like when people think that I'm some secretary,
Yeah.
I play along,
Yeah.
right? And surprise
That's
them, right?
great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think mostly like driven by less so by a person or a figure, but more like deep dissatisfaction about life. So
Yeah.
I just keep escaping in my
Yeah.
life. And I'm no longer escaping now. I'm embracing right now, right?
Yeah.
But this is what my life should be.
Thank you very much for this vivid picture of your trajectory. And I was thinking you had.
And I was thinking like I don't think it was I was thinking this is Dutch. I don't think it was about Dutch. It's European. I don't think it's about European, right?
Yeah.
Because you go out and people still discriminate at you anyway, right?
Hmm.
And I was just thinking, probably academia is for me. There is a culture, certain culture. It's not academia. Academia is still sexist and racist, but there is
Yeah.
places, right? And then for some reason, these people who saw me, at least one person saw me there and connected me to some other, and didn't care about my nationality, didn't care about my age, didn't care about my gender. Just I connected to some world class scholar for the opportunity to publish.
Yeah.
These people never asked whether I have PhD or not. I just wrote. And so during that nomad, while I had to be out of the Netherlands because my PhD didn't work out.
Yeah.
And before getting deported, I was out. And while
Yeah.
I was out, a year and a half in nomad, which is I was in London, I was in Oxford, I was in Honolulu, I was in Hanoi,
Lord.
I was in Bangkok, right? Uh, and I don't remember how I survived, but uh,
Should be a movie on this.
and I was mostly writing. I had
Yeah.
this one suitcase, and it's like that's it. My life was for a year and a half, and I started publishing. That's a culture of publishing. That's
Yeah.
for me like, whose culture is this, right? Okay, there is a place for me. actually, I was like, how do people don't ask who I am, right? Because
Yeah.
it's just emailing, right? Emailing. And of course, I was naive at that moment. I decided this is it. I
Hmm.
think I could actually become someone. And then I started getting invitation for speaking. Basically, people pay me, fly me things because apparently I'm not bad. I was
Yeah.
thinking like, oh, this is cool.
Yeah.
People actually pay me to fly to speak for 20 minutes. That was the, I think the knowledge universally sort of, there are people all over the world who care about knowledge, and
Hmm.
they are also good human being. So, and that's something that I believe until now. Like, we are connected, right? I don't know how we are connected, but there's something about being, trying to be part of that larger uh, network of people who have that culture of humanity, that
Yeah.
treat each other as equal, that regardless who you are, regardless your education, your nation, your language. And I thought it was 2000, I believe it was 2001. And I said to myself, this is it. I want to be part of that network of human individual throughout the history who care about justice and equality,
Yeah.
and to be on the right side of the history, even though we don't really see that while we are alive, right? Whether
Yeah.
we contribute, the changes that we wanted to see probably wouldn't happen, but I want to have that legacy in my life. And that's the kind of like culture that I want to be part of. Yeah.
Thank you for giving us this amazing picture of how you found this culture. And I was thinking we could jump to the very heart of the interview, which is a very blunt question in a way, a bit unacademic, but basically, and I ask this everybody, like, what is your understanding of racism, and what do you perceive as its causes and its effects? How do you see this?
Racism is any action, whether it is something that you physically do or not, right?
Hmm.
Whether it is verbally expressed or not. But I think it is a sense of superiority that put yourself or your group, your in group, as more superior than, better than others. If any slight, right? So as simple as that, which is, I think, any thought and action that actually make us less equal, right?
Yeah.
Than it is. So, and I'm, no matter how small it is, even when it is here, right? And even though, like, people, oh well, you, if you don't really physically pursue it, it's harmless. No, it is not, right?
No.
And and it is, obviously, we were not born racist, but unfortunately, even as a child, right,
Hmm.
there is unconscious racism, right, being instilled almost in every single culture, right?
Yeah.
And I think probably for me and for you, uh, some of us experience it more than others, just simply because how we look like, right?
Yeah.
And and but I also feel like, if we think of ourselves like, this is like, we are 97% similar, right, DNA wise, and we
Yeah.
are only 3% this skin and hair. uh, I'm just always like thinking like, if we cannot even see how we are just the same human being all over the world, I think
Yeah.
we fail in humanity, and therefore racism is the biggest source of all problems, right? I
Yeah.
mean, war that we see now, right? What it is if not racism? And of course, once you have that racism, everything else ideology wise. religious could be used to manipulate that sense of superiority, politics, everything else goes with it, right?
Mm.
Polarization and all the problem that we have, and including what I see online, for example, because our life has now become online, offline. There is a blurring boundary of online and offline. That's
Yeah.
racism is everywhere, is normalized, right?
Yeah.
And more than that is emboldened, but by a kind of culture which is like not no longer a freedom of speech but freedom to hate, right? I mean, I wrote
Yeah.
an article about that. It seems easy, and and that's scary because this is 2024. In some ways we make a lot of progress as uh, make a lot of human progress, but
Hmm.
also I think we see the culmination of racism, where racism is not only practiced but also legitimized,
Yeah.
right? By, uh, of course, if we follow U.S. politics, unfortunately,
Mm.
that's like sort of the emblematic of the global politics, right?
Yeah.
Racism is on the forefront of it, right? Uh, so that's what I can say.
And I was thinking one of your fields of expertise is social media. And of course, one could write many, many books about this. But in a compact way, how do you see that modern media and social media is implicated in racism?
So I think social media is implicated mostly. Social media, first and foremost, is designed for profit.
Yeah.
Right? So underlying principle is marketing, what is called neoliberal capitalism, and uh, the engagement that they expect you to do. User engagement is important in order to uh, create more revenue, to increase the revenue from targeted advertising.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, this principle also, it means that it worked through algorithms, which I could uh, write a book about it, but
Yeah.
I said, but algorithm basically, algorithms, social media algorithm and targeted advertising, it means to simplify the market, right? Mapping the market, people who will buy, who and who will not buy. It
Mm.
means who love, right? What matter is who love the product and who hates the product.
Mm.
Everybody else don't matter. Everybody has opinion. And the consequences of that is, once from shoes or cosmetic or coffee, ice cream, and then moves to social problem, social issue, and political issue, it also means that algorithms is geared to make those people who love and who hate something more visible, than louder than others,
Yeah.
right? And that's bad for democracy. That's bad for and as emboldened racism. It also means it's social media, not that it was created to perpetuate racism, but
Hmm.
the implication of that mechanism is that the most racist tweets, the most racist content will have higher probability to be visible, right?
Yeah.
Because it's like it's really based on emotion. So extreme emotion is leveraged by a algorithm. People, things that make people angry, right?
Yeah.
Things that make people hate others are more likely to be visible. I'm not saying that social media users are generally racist, no,
Yeah.
except the racists and acts of racism and racist content have much higher probability to be viral, to be visible, to to be engaged by user,
Yeah.
and consequently, it's normalized racism, normalize the sense of hate, right? That become the currency of social media, and uh, definitely it will not be better. It just get worse over time
Yeah.
because social media now are part of our life. It's not like we are in and out. We are in and out all the time, right? We are online, offline all the time. It means that if we don't intervene, which is my work, is like basically I just like trying to engage policymaker, civil society to push the companies to be more transparent, right,
Yeah.
in their algorithms, but also to have individual and groups and civil society groups to be aware of this, right, to be less complacent especially uh, uh, in creating better environment for the next generation, right? We don't want the next generation to be trapped in that social media bubble, for example.
Yeah.
So yeah, social media is important, is central to this uh, uh, societal dynamic that we see, the trend that we see, right, where
Yeah.
we normalize racism. Yeah.
Thank you for that excellent elucidation. I was thinking it's also interesting to have a bit more of the local situation. So I was wondering, in Canada, in Ottawa, maybe you can talk about some of these local manifestations of racism.
Yeah. So Canadian used to be proud of themselves that, oh, we are not like people in the south of the border, right, in the
Yeah.
U.S. It's true on the surface. It's true that like Canadians are, I think, seemingly are less racist. But in the last several years, what we see is actually alt-right, right, right
Mhm.
wing, right wings groups is actually on the rise.
Yeah.
So like I don't know whether you know groups like some group like Proud Boys,
Yeah.
right? Like a new neo KKK types. I mean, to be accurate, racism like right wing racist right wing groups, far
Yeah.
right groups actually has existed in Canada throughout 100 years. KKK actually Canada has its own KKK
Oh,
back in
okay.
the day. Yeah.
Yeah.
uh, uh, and except that in the past it's like people in the man cave, right? Like they just like saying racist thing to each other, to their friends.
Yeah.
It's like, so social media is very important in kind of perpetuating a sense of community for this group. Like Proud Boys in Canada
Yeah.
is alive and growing. Uh, and we saw, have you heard about Freedom Convoy, for example?
I've heard very marginally, I've heard of it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so
The
so
truckers.
yeah, the truckers, right? The truckers, the truckers, the reality is over 80%, 85% of the truckers actually supported the 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 COVID regulation.
Yeah.
So it's not. I think they were just hijacking the truckers, right? And it works because like when you see truckers, oh, they are middle class, right? Working class. So they
Yeah.
hijack that kind of like. So what happened was that far right network, which is very racist, they're they're xenophobic, Islamophobic, obviously very much inspired by white supremacist
Mhm.
ideology, and people thought there was not they were just small or even didn't exist, right?
Yeah.
So when Convoy suddenly, it was possibly the most successful movements in the history of
Mhm.
modern Canada, people were surprised. The thing is, during the pandemic, as everybody using social media,
Yeah.
right? This far right network they actually growing exponentially because they digitally tap into grievances about pandemic because
Yeah.
people were stressed out, right? People were grieving, and
Exactly.
this is all about emotion, and people were confused on whom to be blamed. So the
Mm-hmm.
convoy, the Freedom Convoy, was a far right led and coordinated event. Actually, I did the research on this that
Yeah.
exploited COVID-19 related crimes and existing discontents because they already formed the network already. Like
Yeah.
uh, like they actually they were small. They had this yellow vest Canada is unlike yellow vest French is very far right.
Yeah.
That was not successful in 2019, but they growing right over time. So
Mm-hmm.
they have slogan like Canada first. It means
Yeah.
anti-immigrant, right? Like American
Exactly.
first. But what they mean is Canada first is white Euro Canadian first.
Yeah.
That's so it's a it's a very racist notion. And how did they grow? Definitely social media. They were on Reddit, Facebook. They
Mm.
had this hidden channel. They have podcasts. Uh, they, they have Ramble, which is like huge in Canada, alternative media for far rights.
Yeah.
And now that we have Conservative Party that there is typically in the past tend to be centric
Yeah.
centric left, right? Centrist left. Now actually has the leader who is right wing.
Has
So
shaped this.
we see it in Canada too. It's not only in the US or let's say in Europe, right? We see
Yeah.
that like in Canada too. We see the local neo-Nazi skinheads. They actually exist and alive. Uh, Pegida, Canadian Defense Leagues. I mean, even
Mm-hmm.
like terrorist entities like 3%er and the Proud Boys. They are alive and thriving, and they are so good with social media
Yeah.
and probably not as bad as in the US, but still bad, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's growing, yeah.
Mm. Thank you for giving these lively and actually scary
Yeah,
examples.
it is scary.
And as a positive counterpoint, I like, or in this series, we place diversity, and I was interested, what is your understanding of diversity, and what have been your earliest encounters with diversity?
I always like so I'm on my side. I also do visual arts, right?
Mm.
I quite seriously, not professionally, but quite seriously, I have exhibition and other things. It's something that I enjoy doing,
Yeah.
and you know, I do like black and whites, but I also like colors. But diversity here, I think I like to kind of like paint diversity not as color per se. Yes, you need colors, right? But
Mm.
also if you paint black, even when you paint something black and white, it's not black and white. It's
Mm.
a range of nuance and layer, right? This is white and this is black. They are far away from each other. You need these all shadows and layerings and like different shades.
Mm.
That's make it beautiful. It's not simply two binary, right? And that's diversity, right? Where you have sometimes you have different color, but also different ways of looking, different way of seeing,
Mm.
different ways of feeling, different belief. And when you bring them into the table, not only it is rich and beautiful, but also we understand the world better, because the world is a complex landscape, and our problem in 2024 is
Mm.
much more complex than it's ever been. And in order to solve, right, to just
Mm.
even understand this complexity, we need diversity of knowledge, we need diversity of perspective, we need diversity of experiences, right? I cannot possibly comprehend uh, people who have very different life situation, right, in terms of their experiences. We need that, right? But also diversity speak to equality, that we've been talking earlier, right? To treat
Yeah.
each other as equal, to give others the voices, their own voices, that to enable all voices to be heard. And I think this is actually pretty much related to what I've been tinkering in my research. So even though I do uh, like Freedom Convoy and other racist network, and something,
Yeah.
it seems gloomy, algorithm seems gloomy, but I also, I'm not a pessimist, right? I'm skeptical probably, but I'm not cynical.
Yeah.
I'm not pessimist. I'm not optimistic, but I'm always hopeful. And through my research, I actually found that's, yes, the what we see on the surface are generally gloomy, right? Polarization, disinformation, racism is on the rise,
Mm.
uh, and the far right is actually also on the rise, exponentially growing. But that's the surface. Once you getting into things that are not visible, right? Because algorithm make all of these things, the extreme, visible, but
Yeah.
humanity still alive and well in a kind of. So I my current research I title is basically Network of Hope and Despair, Network Spaces of Hope and Despair.
Yeah.
So I found network spaces of hopes. Which mean that there are so many small enclaves online and offline, right? Where people
Yeah.
just trying to respect each other, doing something good. Whether it is, for example, mothers, Filipino mothers against war on drug under
Mm.
Duterte, or Papuan human rights activists in Indonesia who try to fight equality for West Papuan individual people, or uh, like anti this Rohingya networks, right? Like
Mm.
activists who are against the Islamophobic network against Rohingya in Myanmar. So all
Yeah.
of this actually there. These are networks that embrace diversity. These
Yeah.
are networks that embrace humanity and justice and equality, and
Mm.
notably, actually, they try to treat all of us human, right, as human.
Yeah.
So, so, so on one hand, yes, this is what we see, but I think my research allow me to go to sort of like underneath what's going on, hidden spaces, small spaces that right now is kind of fragmented, right? But uh, there is hope there.
Yeah.
Yeah, we just have to cultivate them all over the world.
And following up on this point you just made, generally speaking, how do you see the real interrelation between diversity and social media?
So social media by nature, because how the algorithm works, right,
Mm.
is not friendly to diversity, because it tends to perpetuate, or let's say amplify, the loudest, right? The
Mhm.
visibility is usually removing the nuance.
Mm.
That's unfortunately because they need to cater, the algorithm is to cater brands, right?
Yeah.
Corporation and brands. If the brands is like if they don't need diversity, right? Because
Yeah.
diversity is expensive, right? You just want people to cluster people to buy. Okay, you're gonna buy pink or blue. If
Yeah.
they have to make too many products to cater to everybody's taste, it's very expensive.
Yeah.
So that's why we lost diversity.
Mm.
However, social media is not monolithic, right? It's not like one thing. This is what we see. If you aim for virality,
Mm.
diversity has hard time to compete, right? With extreme, superlative, sensational content.
Yeah.
However, diversity is actually is people take advantage. People have human agency, right? People
Mm.
actually love some people at least, right, love
Yeah.
diversity. And you see like the more private entities, I mean, how we are connected for what you do, right? What you do is you are not Elon Musk. People don't really know you the way they know some really racist figure, for example, right?
Yeah.
But you do things. This thing is possible. Our connection is possible through social media. So I think what people do, right, is actually absolutely beautiful, right?
Mm.
I I I just refuse. I don't want to look at the viral. It's increasingly more difficult to look at this diversity, but it is still possible to craft space because we are not 100%. I I think I'm not that techno deterministic. I don't think
Yeah.
algorithm trump everything. We still have agency, and we do actually, right? There are
Yeah.
many places. I'm not saying by default social media uh, uh, facilitate diversity. No.
Mm.
However, human users
Yeah.
all over the world, we do. Some of us do, right?
Mm.
uh, take advantage of our beautiful connection. And that in itself, I think we have, I've seen in my life in the last 10 years, huge diversity of everything is precisely through social media, right? Like
Mm.
artistic expression that is different, right? From different tribes that's otherwise I would never found, right? Music and knowledge, stories, right? Especially stories. I think I believe that, which you probably, you obviously what you do is about storytelling. I believe that stories eventually are the only thing that are left right from us. if
Yeah.
if we don't have anything else, we need to be able to tell our stories, and
Mm.
the diversity of stories and experiences that is still very possible to uh, facilitate on social
Mm.
media.
Thank you very much. That was amazingly well put. Um, be quite blunt. Now, you as a woman of color in the academic sphere in Canada and the Netherlands, what have been some of your own encounters and confrontation with discrimination, and how have they impacted you as an individual, as a scholar?
Yeah, thank you for the questions. It's it's easier now that I have been academic for a while, so I could look back, right? And and it's easier to be older and have more experience for sure.
Mm.
Uh, but the discrimination never goes away. Like for example, I still get email where people send email. I mean, this is happening these days. Like
Yeah.
send email to me and a male professor, for example, knowing that both of us have the same rank. And it's always like many people like would write Professor Smith and Miss Lim, right?
Yeah.
I'm no longer angry about it, right?
Yeah.
Because but that still happened today, right?
Yeah.
And I had this moment where like someone invited me as a keynote and a colleague, and my colleague is a C. She's a female of color as well. She had a research assistant brought us an email, and then doing that thing, Professor X, who is a white man, and Miss Lim, and my colleague wrote an email, CC to me, saying that basically a warning that, well, I think you should probably correct, right? You,
Yeah.
I think it is considered sexist because, Professor Lim, it should be professor. Or if you want to call them by first name, just call both of them by first name, right? Michael and Merlyna. And then he denied it was sexism. Said, no, I didn't. I'm not sexist and I'm not racist, right? Because it was racism and sexism as well. So it's kind of funny, even people are pointed out, people don't deny it, right? And that's easy because that's email. It still happened today, haven't more so back then. But when I was young, and it's not only from white men, it's actually men of color
Yeah.
also look at me. I remember I just got, I was a postdoc in the US, sitting on the dinner, and someone, I mean, people making sexist comment all the time about bodies and stuff, right? And even in the West, or more so. And I remember someone made comment because I just got a tenure track. So this person had a PhD, and I
Yeah.
just got a job, and he didn't get a job. He was very confident that he would get a job tenure track, right? He think he
Yeah.
is smarter than me. And I said, this person is immigrant, brown, male, graduated from the US university. And he said, like, oh, I heard you just got a tenure track job. Yeah, I said, and then he looked at me, he said, of course, you look like this. Everybody will give you a job. Mind you, it's almost 20 years ago. So I was young. And, and I was thinking like, would he say something like that to some white woman, right? And and that's a repeat. That's pretty much like experience. I came to Canada 10 years ago, already
Yeah.
much older. I had dinner as a Canada researcher with someone from the top, a white man. Introduced myself, Merlyna, and his first comment, oh, no wonder. Of course you look like this. He said that. And I said, what do you mean? Except that I was able to push back, right? What do you mean? Yeah, when you were young and female. He didn't say of color, but I know he meant that too. Because, there is a notion that, like, oh, okay, EDI, right? Equity,
Yeah.
diversity, inclusion, higher. But, I said, well, what do you mean? I said, not because I'm good. And then he said, actually, I was quite proud of myself when I said that. It's like, I pushed back. And he said, yeah, of course you are good. Like CRC is like, nobody, it was actually, there was a rigorous process, right? And then
Yeah.
my colleague who is in the hiring committee one time had conversation with me. He said like, well, we were not successful in hiring a person of color all of these years. He was the only a person of color because when you are just slightly better than everybody else, you wouldn't get a job.
Yeah.
You need to be like head and shoulder about everything in order to convince, right? So, and that was a really kind of like a mild one. The the more aggressive one was basically, I did have experience where someone decided to think that I didn't do anything. I was accused of doing something with student, like basically it was a supposedly small incident, and the student apologized and I forgive. And and I was the one who almost fired just simply because, oh man, Aussies like internet, but also like when I was in the US, not only I was the only uh, female of color in one department. In another
Yeah.
department, I was not, but also I was the only non-American, the entire, right?
Yeah.
It was like everything. People had difficulties understanding why am I there. So I was discriminated structurally from people to the top. They didn't even know who I am, you know.
Mm-hmm.
They would call me based on my visa, which is the only person who make it very difficult for them. They think I'm a troublemaker just because I had to get this visa that's special. It's called O1, that I had to go to the provost office every year to get a signature, and then the
Yeah.
people call me based on. And when things go wrong, they decided that I was the one who was wrong, even when
Yeah.
I didn't do anything. I said I did everything right, right? But I learned that someone told me in the midst of difficulties, uh, someone kind told me, Merlyna, just because you didn't win to fight against injustice, it doesn't mean you did anything wrong.
Yeah.
They could take away things from you, but who you are, that you are a really good person. Nobody could take that away from you. And your scholarship, your work, your great work is always yours.
Mm.
So I cannot fight discrimination and racism along the way by hold on to that, right?
Mm.
I think from switching from when I was young, I always thought there was something wrong with me, you know, right?
Mm.
I mean, like why I was, I mean, like I was always interviewing the border, for example, right? And I'm actually, if I were black man, that would be worse. The police stopped me in Arizona, right, with gun and everything. If I were
Mm.
a black man, I would die, right? And I was always like conscious about that. And I was
Yeah.
thinking like, and I was switching from blaming myself as if I was part of the problem to accepting that no, this is not me. This is racism that are external and doesn't change who I am and my works. And then I know I'm a different face, which is no, I will intervene. If it's someone to someone else under my watch, that's the only reason for me to be angry. Almost nobody actually see me angry. Like for little thing, people questioning whether I could be angry at all. But I'm angry when racism in front on under my watch. That's
Yeah.
the time when I'm fight against it, right? Because I'm privileged position right now. It's actually my responsibility to intervene and make sure it doesn't happen when I have power to to intervene. And also beyond that, I think what I'm trying to do is to be part of larger network who fight
Yeah.
against it, right? Because even if we didn't win, what is our choice? We have no choice.
Yeah.
This is the side that we need to be, right? So that's actually, and still, I suppose it's getting better. I mean, 100 years ago, someone like me wouldn't be able to be here, right?
Yeah.
Having said that, I'm still the only Indonesian who is Canada's chair. I'm the only
Mm.
Indonesian who's oh, and women as Canada's are still small. Royal Society is still small. In my field, there's still very much white men. Mm, but I also see that uh, it gets easier not because racism doesn't exist anymore. It gets easier because I think time, life experience, things that you experience, you learn from them, right?
Mm.
And precisely because I faced racism, I think I have become a better person and better champion against racism. Racism. I think that's
Mm.
ultimately that. I think more important to use those discrimination as a sort of like a way, as ammunition, right? That
Yeah.
you make you a better champion for fighting for
Yeah.
anti-racist network, right? I do it in the classroom, right? I do it everywhere in my life. Everywhere it's part of me now, right? And I am an anti-racist activist everywhere. Yeah.
Thank you for this precise and very illuminating elaborations. I was just thinking. And I was just thinking there's an irony in there in this situation you describe, and which I think I also experience, is that this idea of EDI, or generally that it's some kind of privilege to be person of color, and then you can use that to get access to jobs and scholarships, etc. Whereas it's usually the experience, the lived experience tends to be the opposite. Like you say, there's no room for error, and you have to outdo the competition. So it's
Yeah,
just, to me it seems to be the opposite, the situation. Yeah.
it is the opposite, right? And also, we also, it's not like the treatment against us, but also the way we internalize that too, right? And I'm
Yeah.
still like that, I just like couldn't, because I'm still like always thinking, I'm gonna fail, I'm gonna fail, I'm gonna fail, right?
Mm.
and and I was like that too as a minority in Indonesia. That's like, it was a quota for us. It was different, like only 5%. So my brother told me, if you get 80, you didn't get it. You get 90, you have to get close to 100 in order to get admission, right, at the public
Yeah.
university. So all of those things, I think we internalized that, but not without logic, because the reality is, it is, right. We have very little room for error, no room for error.
Yeah.
like I'm always like, uh, in the classroom, for example, right, some
Mm.
of my white colleague, male, they could say things,
Yeah.
whatever, right, they say things, they would get away with it, right. I said,
Yeah.
I don't, right, I don't get away with things. I should be everything ideal, which I cannot. Sometimes I
Yeah.
fail, right? And
Yeah.
a lot of problems happen simply because, not because I did anything wrong, right? It's just because I was held to a ridiculously uh, impossible standard.
Yeah.
And we too, right? We tend to internalize that as well. We try to, right? And I still fighting that. I'm like, I still recently I have to submit and calculate my publication and stuff for administrative purpose. And I
Mhm.
just realized how ridiculous I have been, right? Just like,
Yeah.
oh my God, I could just retire tomorrow. I still like, I'm still, I don't have to do anything anymore in my life, right?
Yeah.
Like, how did it happen? Why? So on one hand, it's good for some people, I think, but also, and media play very important role here, because I think we only we only have like black, for example, like black men are exposed only when they die, right? George Floyd,
Mm.
when they are superhero, which means that you have to like so good, right? Like
Mm.
unbelievably, like, which is one in a million kind of
Mm.
scenario. Or even if you are good, like let's say, for example, there is no coverage in the US that is larger than Didi, the one that doing this network, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's more than Weinstein. The coverage of
Yeah.
Didi, right? So that's exaggerated. You don't see regular people doing good things. Yeah, I'm trying to say, whether you are black, whether you are Papuan, whether you are Rohingya, you are Chinese. Some people are good, some people are smart, some people are lazy, right?
Yeah.
It's the same everywhere. and I think to to do that, to be able to expose people to diversity of stories, right? Going
Mm,
back to, I think it's important to tell the story of every day, right?
mm,
And that's, we are not just, it's almost like when black men or black women in the US fail, it become like huge story, right?
yeah,
What is it?
tremendous.
Yeah, amazing. Or Netflix stories like about baseball player, like because it's a Hispanic, right? Latin. Therefore, it's a big story because it's like, oh, huge story, and then he became a killer, and therefore it's worth of a documentary, right?
Yeah.
Like notorious person of color. People love that stories. I think that is what we fight against, right?
Mm,
Because most people are not killers. Most of people, most of black men are not Didi,
yeah.
right? Uh,
Yeah.
yeah. So on one hand, it's all of PDI, which is whole. I mean, I cannot detract it to other. Obviously, I was talking about other things, but uh, yeah, the notion of EDI unfortunately cannot take away all the deserving uh, reward and compliments, all the erasing, right? Erasing
Mm,
that part, that as if we accomplish certain position without true record. And that's absolutely bogus. And that's not true.
mm,
And having said that, yes, I see in Canada there are people who take advantage of that as well. So it's kind
mm,
of like a very difficult battle to face. Yeah.
mm. Now, given that racism can be such a prominent topic, I have also come across the term racism fatigue. Is that something you could talk about
Yeah,
briefly?
I think because there are two, I would say at least the first thing for some of us, and some probably I belong to that group as well, is that people use the term sometimes just as a catchphrase, right?
Mm,
Like reverse racism or whatever, right? And people whether deny or abuse that term. I think that's become when people no longer know how to what to call something, they just call it racism.
mm,
I think that's and then therefore it has no longer has meaning, right?
mm.
It's being used by the right, like, oh, you like you cry racism now, right? they
Yeah,
they now has become like that. I think probably we need, I'm not saying we should stop talking about racism, we should continue, but also to understand nuances and uh, and complexity of that. Like for example, in the class, I have become very open about, yeah, racism that I'm, let's say when we talk about uh, intersectionality, like
mm,
racism in the classroom, I would say I would be more open now that I am, yes, I look like this, right? And I speak with accent.
yeah,
Uh, and it's nothing to do with competence, but this is what I am, right? That's gender exists, race exists, skin color,
mm,
right? But also there are things that other things. It's not only gender, sexuality, and race. I think that's actually uh, oversimplification because there are other things too. It doesn't mean that all white people are privileged, right? For example, working
yeah,
class, whether what class you are, right? Live
mm,
experience, where you come from,
yeah,
uh, where you were born, right? And that's, but also I. try to tell people, so most of us have unconscious racism, mostly because the way we are exposed to the world. And not necessarily you are a bad person,
Yeah.
but to understand that it is complex, that privilege, right? The so-called white privilege, it doesn't mean that when you have white privilege, it doesn't mean you should feel guilty. No, you should, I think, not to guilt people, not to use racism as a tool to guilt people, to shame people, which is
Mm.
that's what the media conversation has become like that, right? To guilt people. And that's not healthy because all of us right now, I'm said I'm privileged. Yes, I'm still a female of color. And yes,
Mm.
still I still have accent, but I'm privileged now because I'm like economically secure. I have hold this certain position with authority, and I'm more powerful than you, some white, let's say white man in the room who probably coming from working class and still a student. I'm still more powerful, right? Even though he is white. So, and when we move to other place outside classroom, society might treat him better than me, So it's complex. But what I mean is that I said, if you want to fight racism, it doesn't mean that you should be like, oh, I'm apologetic for who you are, whether you are white or not, but shouldn't feel guilty,
Yeah.
but understand that privilege is fluid. But and with every single privilege we have responsibilities, and we should be able to talk about this, right? Rather than oh, I'm white, therefore I shouldn't say anything. A white man shouldn't anything, right? No, we want you to become allies. I think to move away, the racism empathic happen mostly because the end goal is shame and guilt,
Yeah.
right? That's like the trend, right now. We want to people point it out, mockery, and that is not good, actually pushing people to the more extreme.
Mm.
What we need is sort of a place to understand each other, reconciliation, to hold people that we are all responsible, right? Regardless this how we look like, that we are all responsible to actually to decrease the gap between us, right?
Mm.
And I don't think this whole big conversation, like big media sensation helps. But I
Yeah.
still believe in human to human, group interaction. That like I see the classroom as the place to say that to do that. Social media probably less so,
Mm.
unless you are in some kind of like safe place, right?
Yeah.
To do that. Uh, so more conversation, I think, that is real conversation, not shouting through tweets and hashtag. But I mean, this is anti-algorithm, isn't it? That we talk for an hour, over an hour, right? And that's hard to do in the modern world because you want something short and simplified and sensational, right?
Mm.
But we need more conversation than anything else. We need to know each other in a way that is not based on algorithms.
To unpack the complexity. And the last one, I would like to zoom, or the second to last, I would like to zoom a bit more towards the level of popular culture. And it's the idea of social media as a platform for change. Now, in the wake of social media boosted campaigns like Black Lives Matter and raising awareness about racial injustice, in your opinion, what are the potential like benefits? I think you've already talked about those a bit, and the pitfalls of relying on social media for activism and for the representation of people of color. You've already talked, of course, a bit about this, but yeah, how do you see this?
uh, Generally, generally speaking, not about social media per se. Generally speaking, I think uh, we see, right? We see sort of like in popular culture, we see more. There is a rise of uh, networks. I
Mm.
would say, especially black, right? I would say like there is a sort of like a more so among black rather than brown and yellow. I would say, right? That is kind of emerging. You see more representation.
Mm.
Not enough, right? Not quite enough, but you see that emerging. Mostly because I think there is a long term uh, activism, right, among artists and still difficult because while the players, the actors, artists, musicians are more diverse,
Mm.
the real problem is the pipeline, right? The pipeline people on the top, which is we're talking about the power, economic power, right? The the financial right investments still come from
Mm.
not very diverse. That's unfortunately that's uh, and that's not really this is the real problem for everything because
Yeah.
I will sideline from that from the social media. Social media is not democratic, so that's the reality of it. It's
Mm.
a rich get richer kind of network, right? You could buy traffic, buy ads, you could buy influence, and over time, big player become bigger. That's the reality of it. Having said that, there are two ways of making networks on social media. One is to be close to power, which is big actor, which is what many political actors are doing, right?
Yeah.
Uh, partisan political stuff. The other is to to make big networks out of small players. This is what Black Lives Matter has been doing.
Yeah.
This is what which is network spaces of hope that I'm talking about, right? Uh, and there was other things too. Hispanic Coalition from 2005 in the U.S., who was actually successfully forced the government to have Dream Act that was going on online and offline before Black Lives Matter.
Mm.
And you see many network like this in all over the world. That is possible because of the logic of network, right? You find each other. So on one hand is hopeful because the network logic allow us to be connected, and it's good if you could maintain the pace. The real problem is many movements. I'm not talking about specific movement.
Yeah.
Grow too big because of virality, right? It means you go to public. Once you go to public, it's very easily be hijacked by binary, right?
Yeah.
And it's become like pro and contra, right? Anti. So like blue lives matter or black lives matter, as if you only have two choices. No,
Yeah.
it's not like that. And then oh, black lives matter, it means that you you don't care about other lives, which is absolutely wrong
Mm.
interpretation, right? As if Black Lives Matter is against all lives matter,
Yeah.
right? But that complexity were gone mostly because it went viral. Once you went viral, it's like an ad. It's like a Nike shoes. It's like people just hate or love, right? And that's necessary to for any social movement to go viral.
Mm.
But that's not actually where the social movement ends. When you are on public space, and that's just one segment. I think we should think of social movement as a longitudinal movement for social change. Social media is here
Mm.
to consolidate, to create the networks. This
Mhm.
is in routes,
Yeah.
routers. That's was us talking about social media, right? But also, what people are, many movements fail because they become big and they seize the power. They're talking about Arab Spring, for example. But what they don't do is institutional building. When you get rid of something, right,
Mm.
you need to replace it with something. like,
Yeah.
like, like, like Black Lives Matter has been successful creating this consolidating, but what is the 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 changes, right? Social change. So you cannot just change people, right? You
Mm.
need sort of like institutional building, which is tedious, mostly in person, not fun, and
Yeah.
longitudinal work. This is
Yeah.
the half part that you don't see. It's not about hashtag. It's not about protest on the street. It's about connecting people, policymakers, right? You have to have a institution, right, to
Yeah.
actually really translate what it means. This is social change is far away. It's there, an incremental step, and it's a lot of work and unrewarding because you're not going to be famous doing tedious work. Legality, right?
Yeah.
Economic, how to do with economic, socio-economic ramification of that, right? So this is where we pay. Most of movement fail because not patient enough to do a lot of hard work,
Yeah.
uh, and in its time, uh, and so social change couldn't happen online.
Yeah.
It was awareness, yes, we could. It could actually, we could pave ways, making networks for movement that possibly create social change, but it
Mm.
doesn't, right? Doesn't social change cannot happen through just simply some kind of virality or it's important still. It's part of the important part to first awareness create. The second is create the network, right, of the believers and pre-riders mostly, right? Some pre-riders who we need pre-riders too, and to consolidate. But I think to go from this all public like a spotlight and do some work online and offline,
Yeah.
use this little connection online and offline to have conversation and creating intervention on everyday aspect of life, that is more important for social change.
Mm. Yeah, the legwork needs to also be done. You said it just reminded me of this book also that came out 2 or 3 years ago by I think Mozarov, which is called "Click Here to Save Everything." This illusion that there is no more need for the physical part, but the
Yeah, and
physical.
longitudinal, right? It's not just like, oh, I'm gonna be like care about this today, click, click, click. You
Uh,
have to be engaged, even if it's virtual, right? Like we could do something real virtually, but over time,
yeah,
slow, everything that's, I think, too too easy to become, too fast and too many. That's what social media activism has that problem. So
yeah,
it become big, viral, and then easily gone because it's not rooted in anything. But
mm,
if you, I was advising some networks for social change, and I told them, would you be able to control yourself, not wanting too big to become too big too fast?
mm,
Because I think you need like I said, there is free believers and free riders in every single social movement. And free riders are important, right? People who just because you need numbers.
yeah,
However, if you don't have, if everybody is free riders, it's gone,
yeah,
right? You need true believer, people who believe in the hard work, right? Whether they have 1 hour a week, 1 hour a day, or 1 hour a month, they need to be there along the way. And that networks of people who who believe in the social movement is important. It's the notion of, you know, social justice warrior, right? And now it has a kind of negative connotation, right? Because of people who just tweets and say something. Not
Yeah.
that. In the past, it was actually, yeah. I mean, like people look at the civil rights movement, people there for the entire of their lives, right? Since they were young until they die, they continue working, and that's what we need. It's
Mm.
okay not to is to do it online is possible too, except that you need it longitudinally, not moments, not focusing on moments, but focusing on the trajectory rather
Yeah.
than just moments. Yeah.
So yeah, thank you very much for this amazing interview. It was really fascinating talking to you and all the many experiences and rich ideas and thoughts you have on this topic.
I mean,
And
it's yeah. Now that you kind of like make me reflect on my journey, it's kind of crazy. I mean, it's like I never really tried to seek troubles in my life, but it was kind of crazy. I got I always like almost get into dramatic situation. Like I was jail, for example,
oh my
at some
God.
point. Like
Yeah.
but like almost die several times.
Oh
Uh,
God.
so if anything, this interview just make me more grateful about where I am, and
Mm,
so thank you. Yeah, and
I'm very happy to hear.